when it comes to business structuring, um, business owners and their advisors will set up businesses on the front end, not thinking through the lens of succession. And so things can happen sometimes as they move fast, as their business grows, as they buy real estate, buy additional businesses, where the corporate structure, the actual structure of the entities, gets a little jumbled up. And it can be a little bit difficult to untangle that. And the only reason you really need to untangle it is depending on what the succession plan is and what the estate plan is and the ultimate goal of the business owner. And so sometimes you end up, finding, you walk into a situation where you've got, 5 or 6 businesses that are all wrapped up in one corporation. And you've got a situation where you need, for flexibility and planning purposes, you need to spin those businesses off into separate entities. You might have an operating business and the real estate owned in the same company. And it'd be really beneficial if there's a way to do it, to spin the real estate out into its own separate entity. The reason you do those things is to meet the goals of the business owner. And oftentimes you find advisors like a CPA, as an example, who would take a look at, oh, you need to spin the real estate out. And it makes sense from the perspective you're coming from. The only reason we haven't done that before is because of the tax liability. It's a huge hit tax-wise. And so you really have to work through with what the goal is and make sure you don't have the tax tail wagging the dog. And sometimes it's better to just go ahead and bite that bullet and pay the tax, or to pay attention to circumstances that are going on so that you can strike when the iron is hot. As an example, we have a recapture of LIFO. That's an accounting term that can be a big impact on some corporate restructuring. And that's related to inventory. And over the last couple of years, through the pandemic and the supply chain issues, people had low inventory. And so you get to a point where your LIFO is really low, and it makes sense now to spin off a business or to do some kind of restructuring where that LIFO is not such a big impact. And so it ultimately comes back to the business owner's goals, what they're trying to accomplish, and let's make sure that the structure that's in place, matches with the achievement of those goals. And the structures are one part of it. The other part of it is the documentation that's in place that supports those. You can put as an example, an LLC in place just by, forming the entity. And that's a pretty easy process. It's just to, pay the fee and go through the process. You can do it online. You can have it in a few minutes. What's more important is, do you have an operating agreement for that LLC? Do you have, some sort of a document structure in there that controls the ownership of the entity, that has triggering events in it, that has call options and put options, and the ability for a family to navigate the succession process and maintain family harmony? You may have some kids who are not involved in the business, kids who are involved in the business, and you decide as a part of your planning that those who aren't involved in the business are going to get, the real estate, and the kids who are involved in the business get the business. And so the documentation between those two entities becomes a family harmony issue. And so you want to make sure that you're dealing with the structures, which a lot of advisors, CPAs, attorneys are approaching that from, just the vantage point of getting it done. But when you apply the lens and the filter of family harmony, and you apply the lens of flexibility and planning, that's when the structuring becomes a big issue.